So for the sake of comparison, let's assume that this would be the structure of both deals. Ollie Watkins for between £50 to £55 million, plus another £1.5 million each time United with Watkins qualify for the Champions League over the course of his 4-year contract, plus maybe another £4 million for actually winning the title, or Benjamin Sesko for £60 to £65 million as a fixed payment to Leipzig, as well as £1 million every time United qualify for the Champions League with Sesko over his 5-year contract, and another £5 million if Sesko wins either the Premier League or Champions League with United, taking it to a likely £65 to £70 million, with Watkins' likely end cost coming in at around £55 to £60. So considering the cost, who do I think would be a better deal for United this summer? Well, I do think that Watkins is the superior player currently, as well as being the better stylistic fit for the system. However, I do think that Sesko for about £65 million up front is a better deal for United than Watkins for maybe £5 to £10 million cheaper. But why exactly do I think this? Well, of course age profile plays a big part, but it's not directly the main issue with any deal for Watkins that United could pursue. It's the PSR cost. See, on the surface you would assume that Sesko is the more expensive of the two, and that even if you did factor in the difference in salary package, because Watkins would likely be on around £9 to £10 million a season, and Sesko between £7 to £8 million initially, that they would still work out around the same PSR cost. But there are two key factors in these transfers that people often overlook. And in just a minute I'm going to tell you what those two key factors are, then coming on to the pros and cons for both Sesko and Watkins, analysing both players statistically and from the eye test, before making a stylistic comparison between the two, involving a few iconic strikers of previous generations. But before I get into that, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to okjersey.com. They've got the new Manchester United releases for the upcoming season, with OK Jersey also allowing you to pick up high quality football shirts from just £15, plus free shipping across Europe for all orders over £45. They sent me over these new release alternative Manchester United jerseys from this season, as well as a long sleeved retro home shirt from the 92-93 season with Cantona 7 on the back, alongside this Nuno Gomez Benfica shirt from the 97-98 season as well. If you use code ATLANTIS at checkout you'll get a discount, so I'll leave a link in the description and in the comment section below. So what are the two key factors in the Ollie Watkins deal that people are overlooking? Well, being 29, 30 in December, United would likely be signing him on a 4, not a 5-year contract, with there likely being a 1-year extension that both parties can agree to. Now of course that does make sense due to his age profile, but it means that PSR wise United end up paying more each season for Watkins compared with Benjamin Sesko. And I'm going to break down those numbers so you can get an idea of the cost difference between both signings, as well as bringing up another key factor that does work in Sesko's favour. But before we break down the PSR cost, let's first factor out the cost and assume that if brought in, United would recruit as required to enable both Watkins and Sesko to be the starting centre forward in a title challenging side by the 26-27 season. What are the pros and cons of both players? Well, the obvious pro with Watkins is his current ability, particularly his statistical output and performance level in the Premier League over a consistent period of the past 2 to 4 years. In the Premier League last season, Watkins actually recorded a higher non-penalty XG rate than Alexander Isak. And so despite underperforming his non-penalty XG slightly, he was still ranking higher than the chasing pack for non-penalty goals. Sesko's goal-scoring output, on the other hand, wasn't anything special last season. As I said in my initial analysis video on him, which I'll leave linked in the eye above, the reduction in Sesko's non-penalty XG and non-penalty XG per shot rates from the 23-24 season in both the Champions League and Bundesliga, in comparison to his output domestically last campaign, shows statistical proof that Sesko wasn't getting as many high-value chances as he was in the previous season, which I think was primarily caused by Sesko playing alongside Openda in a front two, where he was often the forward required to drift into wider and deeper areas rather than maintaining the sort of advanced central position that would maximise his ability to generate high-value chances, as he was able to do in the season prior. And in the 23-24 season, when looking specifically at Benjamin Sesko's goal-scoring metrics, you can see that he wasn't just ranking higher than Ollie Watkins, but also higher than most strikers in Europe's top 5 leagues, sitting in the top 4% or as high as the top 1% For metrics like non-penalty goals, goals minus XG, headed goals and goal conversion. With the fact that he ranks significantly lower despite still being fairly respectable, for metrics like shot frequency and XG per 100 touches, shows that Sesko most likely was still not operating at his optimal chance generation level, which I think would improve instantly simply by being used as an advanced central forward ahead of two interior forwards who can be the ones to move wide and drop deep to link play in United's narrow front three. So whilst last season Sesko definitely dropped off in terms of output, I think he will return to being a high volume goal scorer, a high XG generator and a high XG converter as early as next season, even in the Premier League. However, in terms of current ability, you'd have to consider it a con on Sesko's side in comparison to Ollie Watkins. And I think it's fairly evident statistically, with Watkins producing significantly higher output for a number of different key metrics, including goal scoring, chance creation and carrying, with the eye test also providing the same conclusion. See, Sesko does have the ability in his skill set to do everything that Watkins is able to do, from receiving direct passes from deep, using his physicality and technical ability, to link play efficiently with his back to goal, spinning wide of the centre-backs looking to be released in a 1v1 in the channel, to then push the defender back into his own box, as well as having the ball manipulation and clinical finishing ability from a variety of different positions and situations off of either foot inside of the box. However, comparing him to Watkins, you can definitely see a difference between a refined skill set that has been steadily but consistently developed over the past 3 to 5 seasons, and the skill set of a younger striker with all the underlying qualities needed to reach the elite level, but as of yet he doesn't quite have the understanding of how to use his body against the defenders as effectively and consistently as Ollie Watkins is able to do. And I think you'll get a clearer understanding of the difference in style and current ability between Sesko and Watkins when I make comparisons with them and strikers from previous decades. But before that, let me break down the PSR costs of both transfers in the raw and probable numbers. So based on what I think would be a fair and realistic valuation, Sesko's transfer fee would be a total PSR cost of £65 million for the transfer fee, which would be about £13 million a season, with Ollie Watkins at £55 million, working out at about £13.75 million a season. Add on to that their likely salaries, and Sesko's works out at around £21 million per season as a PSR cost, and Watkins at around £23.75 million. But surely that means that Sesko at £105 million in total, compared with Watkins at £95 million in total, means that Sesko is more expensive by about £10 million. Well, that is correct, until you also factor in both players' likely resale value. See, with Watkins coming in at 29-30 by the end of the year, you'd have to assume that he leaves on a free in his 4th year simply because of his salary package, which if he declines pessimistically after maybe 2 years, realistically after his 3rd, then you aren't going to be able to recoup any of the money that you paid for him. Sesko, on the other hand, given that Højlund currently could still probably be sold for between 25 to 30 million pounds, means that that's probably the least that you could expect for Sesko if you were to sell him in year 3 of his contract, or even year 4 if there is a club option to extend it by a year. If you factor that in, and Sesko's estimated total PSR cost of around £105 million and £21 million a season reduces to a total of £75 million conservatively, working out about £15 million a season, which would be £8.75 million a season and £20 million in total cheaper compared with the deal for Ollie Watkins. So one significant con when it comes to signing Ollie Watkins is that his age profile does significantly increase the cost and therefore the risk of the transfer. Yes, Watkins is Premier League proven, but my concern isn't with his performance level, it's with United's. See, if you're paying £23.5 million a season for a soon-to-be 30-year-old, you have to be aiming to win the title the season after next in the 26-27 season, which not only requires significant investment next summer, but also in the rest of this transfer window, because otherwise you're wasting Watkins' best years, and by the time you're in a position to challenge for the title, Watkins has already started to decline, and Sesko's development has seen him overtake Watkins in terms of their current ability at that time anyway. However, that being said, I do think right now in 2025, Watkins might be the perfect striker for Ruben Amorim's system. See, Watkins is a typical example of a striker who has the ability to turn a bad ball into a good one, and this is because of his pace in behind, his physicality in duels, and the speed of thought and movement that he possesses, being a rare stylistic hybrid between a winger and a striker, who also thrives in quick transitional attacks, from crosses into the box, and in counter-pressing situations. But to be fair, Sesko is all of these things as well, just being a level or two below Watkins at the moment in each of those given areas, which you would certainly expect given that Sesko is at the start of his career whilst Watkins is in his peak. But now looking back at the past, I'd say from a stylistic point of view, I'd compare Ollie Watkins to Fernando Torres from 2007 to 2009. Because of how good his movement in behind and down the side of the centre-backs is, having a similar sort of ball-carrying ability and pace compared with Torres, whilst also possessing a similar level of clinical finishing ability to Torres, maybe actually having greater variety with his finishes as well, as I would say that Watkins currently is superior in the air and with his weaker left foot than Torres was even in his prime, a testament to how good Watkins actually is. Sesko, on the other hand, has the outline of a stylistic profile that, if he does reach his potential, could eventually see him develop into a blend of Ronaldo Nazario and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, being a complete centre forward, being able to do everything that Watkins can but also excelling and dropping deep and becoming a connector and a playmaker of the attack, as Ronaldo Nazario would do at Inter Milan, alongside having a similar sort of goal-scoring trait to Ibrahimovic that allows him to score from attempts that other strikers wouldn't even consider trying, let alone being able to execute from, winning you matches out of nowhere in a blink of an eye. Alongside this, he also poses a significant goal-scoring threat inside of the box from a variety of different situations. Comparing him to Nicolas Anelka at Arsenal between 97 and 99 highlights Sesko's technical completeness, yet like the teenage Anelka, he still has games where he struggles to impose himself against top-level centre-backs. And it's that kind of ironclad consistency which is precisely the trait Ollie Watkins has developed over the past 2 or 3 years. However, that level, even if Sesko's development goes according to plan, is likely still 2 to 3 years away at least. Although the foundations of his current skill set do suggest that once he is able to refine these parts of his game, he is going to be close to reaching his potential, which I think is generational and will see him competing with the likes of Haaland and Isaac as the best striker in the league, but people will take that the wrong way and assume that this means that Sesko will be underwhelming in the next 1 or 2 seasons, which is not the case at all. I see him performing to a level below what I would predict Watkins' level would be for the next 12-18 months at least, with Sesko competing with the likes of Mateta, Jackson, Solanke and Liam Delap in the category below the likes of Haaland, Isaac and Watkins, which would still be a significant upgrade on Højlund and Xerxes. But that being said, I will acknowledge that that could be the difference between getting top 4 and finishing outside the top 5 this season, specifically if United don't strengthen adequately in central midfield and at left wing back, and Andre Onana continues to have random moments of stupidity that cost United games. However, prioritising the signing of Watkins over Sesko, specifically because of the fear that without a striker with the quality of Watkins, United would potentially miss out on Champions League qualification, highlights United's lack of strategy with their transfers this summer, having to take significant PSR risks in order to achieve what should be the baseline expectation and perfectly realistic and achievable without going big on Watkins. If United had spent their budget efficiently, not then having to rely on individual forwards to make up for their lack of quality recruitment in the central midfield, left wing back and goalkeeper positions. So overall, I think as long as the price doesn't end up above a fixed fee of £70 million, considering United aren't likely to sign more than one other player after him, I would be very happy with the Sesko deal, even if like the Mbeumo and Cunha deals, United would be overpaying by £10 to £15 million. So let me know what you think of Sesko in the comments, and if you want to check out any cheap good quality football jerseys, go over to okjersey.com. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. I'll leave a link in the description and in the comment section below. And you can also check out the playlist I've just made as well, which I'll leave on the end screen now as well.